Starting with your hot takes, as we call them, Andrew.
It's all about cost of living, isn't it? Simple as that.
Simple.
Well, I'd say on that point, I was surprised that the opposition didn't have a stronger political attack on cost of living. It's the issue eclipsing everything. Everything else is just noise, and the opposition didn't make much today.
We saw confirmation, you touched on it in your introduction, Chris Bowen confirming in question time that yes, he has looked at the developments in the United States as Joe Biden's winding back the vehicle emissions or the fuel efficiency standards, and he's looked at that as he's finalising the government's plan. So confirmation that that story in the front page of the Australian today wasn't far off the mark. It looks like very much the government's going to rein that in a bit, but Chris Bowen maintaining that they will take proper reform too. So it might take a few of the edges off that policy, Tom.
Been a bit of pressure on the government in the particular area. It's the final sitting week, of course, before the budget. The government has been dropping a few hints of what could be to come on May 14.
There are a range of options available to the government, whether it's another round of electricity bill relief or other ways that we could help ease some of these cost of living pressures.
Could there be another rise in rental assistance though?
We're always looking at about how we can improve cost of living for Australians. We need to do it in a way that doesn't add to inflation.
We've known for a long time it's around helping out with cost of living, but being wary of inflation. So the obvious measures are anywhere where you have a subsidy, so money doesn't land in accounts. Do you think there's a bit more pressure, Liv, to find a little bit more maybe in the budget, given the news poll, maybe, you know, the tax cut changes are sort of settled out there and nobody cares anymore?
Yeah, I do think that there's pressure on them. I mean, on the one hand, Jim Chalmers, he's trying to show that Labor is fiscally responsible, but at the same time, he's got caucus members with their hands out wanting more money. But for me, I think the problem for Labor, I mean, you know, they might give some more rent relief, they might do some more energy bill relief, but it's in the cell, because last year they did actually promise a lot when it came to cost of living relief, and privately a lot of Labor MPs were kind of annoyed that whether that be childcare, cheaper medicines, it wasn't resonating with punters. So it's a bit of a tea leaf reading exercise at this point in time, but I do think that there's a bigger imperative for Jim Chalmers to sell whatever they do commit to properly.
For all the talk of budget surplus, I mean, as long as you're spending money after July, you're okay, right? That's the current financial year is more where they'll get one last budget, we think. So inflation's a bigger factor, isn't it, rather than sort of budget pressure, which was hinted at recently, I thought, by the Treasurer.
Albanese's talked about a budget in March, like the Libs. So whether they do that, I mean, they used to bag it. But look, it's been said to me they're after the quadrilla, which is unemployment low, surplus, inflation down, wages up.
And so a lot this year, but not, are you saying next financial year as well?
Yeah.
Next financial year surplus?
Yeah.
Okay.
But, I mean, so what they're trying to say is we're lifting your wages. That's what Jim Chalmers is out with this minimum wage thing today, and they keep saying they're in question time. And that's how we're addressing the cost of living. And they're saying that's not hitting inflation. Whereas if we gave a cash splash in the budget, that would hit inflation. Now, last budget, they did this energy assistance for couples and families earning less than 150 or 150 grand or less. That misses a lot of Middle Australia. And they felt they had to compensate, and then they kept talking about we're doing a lot for Middle Australia. So do they vary the threshold on that? That's an option. We know they're going to extend it. He's indicated that. We know rental assistance are going to lift. Chris Richardson, the economist, was on the program saying that's a non-inflationary way they can do something about cost of living, and it's been made clear to me the only things they're doing about cost of living are non-inflationary. But they're for the poorest in the community, who frankly, politically, they're going to vote for Labor anyway.
Well, although the rental element helps them out when they're fighting the Greens, doesn't it? So even if they're low income,
that's true.
Maybe they're younger people who aren't earning a lot, but they don't have families. That's
a good point. That's a good point. However, a lot of those Greens preferences come back to Labor, but I guess in those seats where the Greens actually win, the 3 or 4, and in the Senate, that matters. But that's really what we're looking at. And then they have to grit their teeth and hope those rates come down, the inflation comes down, the rates come down, and they're proved right out the other end that we only did a bit on cost of living, and in doing so we didn't push inflation up. But at the same time, they're putting the onus on employers to lift wages. Now, that's kind of going to happen anyway when you've got low unemployment because of supply and demand. It's what happens in a year's time where the rubber hits the road, and that just happens to be election time.